Ever get the feeling that confidence is like this big, loud thing? Something that you just have to be born with.
Yeah.
Like you need to be the loudest person in the room, like the most extroverted.
Right.
What if I told you that there's a quieter, more powerful way to be confident? That's what we're going to be looking at in this deep dive.
Okay.
And we're going to be drawing from this Creative Mind podcast episode called Confidence Isn't Loud. Here's how to find your voice.
I like that.
But before we even get started, I want you to think about a time that you felt super confident.
Okay.
Like truly confident.
Yeah.
What made that moment so different?
Yeah.
Just hold on to that feeling
Okay.
as we get into this.
You know, it is fascinating how we kind of have this picture in our minds when we think about confident people.
Yeah.
I think like booming voice, front and center, late for the party.
Totally.
But the source material makes a really interesting point.
Okay.
True confidence is an inside job.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, it's not about needing that validation from other people.
Right.
But it's about having that really deep, secure feeling in yourself.
It makes you think about people like Rosa Parks or Greta Thunberg.
Totally.
They weren't necessarily the loudest voices in the room,
Right.
but they had this quiet confidence that was so powerful.
Powerful and impactful, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then how do we reconcile that with the fact that we do have to speak up in life?
Right.
We do have to express ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do those two things go together?
Well, that's where this idea of the two sides of voice comes in that they talk about in the source material.
Okay.
You have your inner voice,
Right.
which is that constant self-talk that we all have.
Uh-huh.
And then you have your outer voice,
Mm-hmm.
which is how you communicate with the world.
So, like, if my inner voice is full of self-doubt,
Right.
it doesn't matter how eloquently I sneak or how well I get my point across.
It's going to be shaky.
Yeah, exactly.
Not gonna...
That's such a good point. I love that.
Yeah.
So for people, especially people who are really prone to that negative self-talk, what are some ways that you can start to strengthen that inner voice?
Well, in the source material, they suggest a really simple but powerful exercise.
Okay.
And that is to just take a moment and listen to that inner voice.
Okay.
Like really listen.
Yeah.
Is it mostly supportive or is it critical?
Mm.
And then once you can identify what that pattern is,
Right.
you can start to challenge those negative thoughts and
Drop.
replace them with something a little more constructive.
So it's almost like retraining your brain to be your own cheerleader instead of your own worst critic.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
But how do we then make sure that our inner voice and our outer voice are aligned
Right.
so that we're being authentic?
I love this analogy that they use in the source material.
Okay.
They talk about these two voices needing to sing the same tune.
Oh, wow. I like that.
Right. So your inner voice shapes your beliefs. And your outer voice is how those beliefs are communicated to the world. When those two things are in sync, that's when you project genuine confidence.
They had this really cool exercise in the episode
Yes.
where they asked listeners to write down 3 words describing their authentic selves.
Yes.
Did anything come to mind for you when they were talking about that?
You know, I actually did jot a few things down.
That's
It's amazing how much we filter ourselves, you know, just in everyday life.
Yeah.
And just kind of taking it back to those really core words can be pretty insightful.
It's like a good reminder of what foundation you're building your confidence on top of.
Yeah, totally.
But realistically, it's not always smooth sailing.
Oh, absolutely not.
We've all hit those roadblocks when it comes to confidence, right?
Sure.
What are some of the things that get in our way?
Well, the source material talks about some common things like imposter syndrome,
Yes.
fear of rejection, comparison culture, especially nowadays with social media. It's
Right.
everywhere.
Oh, it's so easy to fall into that trap of comparing yourself to others.
Oh, yeah.
What resonated with you the most from their discussion on those things?
You know, I thought they had a really interesting point about reframing rejection.
Okay.
Like, instead of seeing it as a personal failure,
Yeah.
think of it as data.
Okay.
It might not be the right fit.
Yeah.
It might not be the right timing,
Mm-hmm.
but each no gets you closer to the right yes.
It's a good way to look at it.
Yeah, it's a shift in perspective for sure.
So instead of letting rejection totally shut you down, you're using it to learn and grow.
Exactly.
But what about imposter syndrome?
Yes.
How do you deal with that feeling of just not being good enough?
Right. Even when, like, you have evidence to prove yourself wrong.
Yeah, you're like, wait, but I've done all this stuff. Why do I still feel like this?
Well, one of the things I say is to really acknowledge those accomplishments.
Okay.
Because sometimes we get so focused on what we haven't done yet that we forget to celebrate what we have already accomplished.
Right. So it's almost like creating a list of all of your wins.
Yeah, and even the small ones.
So you can go back and look at it and
Well,
be like,
yeah.
actually, no, I am capable.
Exactly.
But how do we take that, like acknowledging our accomplishments
Right.
and really move into embodying that quiet confidence?
Right. So taking those accomplishments
Yeah.
and actually using those.
Yeah. Are there any like actual things you can do, like techniques or tools?
There are actually.
Okay.
They talk about some really practical approaches,
Okay.
like mindfulness, preparation, body language, and active listening.
Okay, let's break those down.
Okay.
Because those sound like things that anyone can work on.
Right.
So how does mindfulness tie into quiet confidence?
So when you are mindful, you're not so caught up in those anxious thoughts
Okay.
or overthinking past mistakes. So that inner stillness
Yeah.
allows you to be more present, which then automatically kind of projects that sense of calm confidence.
So it's like clearing away the mental clutter to make room for that confidence.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so I can see how that goes into preparation as well.
Absolutely.
If you're prepared for something, you're naturally going to feel more confident going into it.
Right, because you're like, okay, I've got this.
Yeah.
I know what to expect.
Even if things don't go exactly to plan,
Exactly.
at least you've got that foundation.
Yeah, it's not about eliminating those nerves,
Right.
but it's about knowing that you've done the work to be ready.
Okay. And what about body language?
Yes.
How does that play into this quieter confidence?
Our bodies are constantly communicating,
Okay.
whether we realize it or not.
Right.
So think about the difference between someone who's like hunched over, avoiding eye contact,
Right.
versus someone who's standing tall, shoulders back, making eye contact.
It's almost like your posture is a physical representation of how you're feeling on the inside.
Yeah.
But how can you use that intentionally to project more confidence, especially if you're not someone who naturally like wants to take up a lot of space?
Right. And it's not about being someone you're not.
Gotcha.
Even small adjustments,
Okay.
like sitting up straight,
Right.
making eye contact while you're listening to someone. It can send those signals of attentiveness and presence,
Okay.
which are hallmarks of quiet confidence.
So it's almost like those subtle cues kind of create a feedback loop.
Right.
Even if you don't feel super confident on the inside,
Yeah.
just the way you're holding yourself can start to shift that.
Absolutely.
Interesting. And then there's active listening,
Yes.
which I think a lot of people think of as like a basic communication skill.
Right.
But how does that actually tie into building your own confidence?
When you are truly engaged in what someone is saying,
Uh-huh.
not just waiting for your turn to talk,
Yeah.
you're showing respect and genuine interest.
Yeah.
So you're building that rapport with the person.
Right.
And when you feel that connection, it naturally boosts your confidence in the interaction.
So it takes the pressure off of needing to be the one who's performing
Right.
and allows you to just be present and be responsive.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've talked about defining this different kind of confidence.
Yes.
We've talked about understanding our inner and outer voices.
Right.
And we've even touched on some of those practical tools.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though, how does all this translate into actual real life situations?
Right.
Like, how do we apply quiet confidence in our relationships?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it's something we're going to explore more in the next part of this deep dive.
Okay.
But to give you just a little taste,
Okay.
think about how quiet confidence could help with setting boundaries.
Ooh, good one.
Yeah, it's not about being aggressive,
Right.
but it's about having that inner security to clearly state your needs and expectations.
So it's less about being loud and
Mm.
more about being assertive and knowing your worth. Yeah, that's something I think a lot of people could work on.
For sure.
So before we move on to the next section,
Mm-hmm.
is there anything from this first part that really stood out to you?
You know, what really stood out to me
Yeah.
is that this quiet confidence is not something that you're just born with.
Okay.
It's not a personality trait.
Right.
It's a skill set,
Okay.
just like any other skill
Mm-hmm.
that you can develop and improve through practice and self-awareness.
It's accessible to anyone.
Exactly. I love that.
Regardless of their personality or background.
That's a really good takeaway.
Yeah.
So as we move into the next part of our deep dive,
Okay.
keep that in mind.
Yeah.
We're going to be talking about how this quiet but powerful force can actually impact your relationships,
Yeah.
your career,
Right.
even your creative pursuits.
Absolutely.
So many possibilities.
Yeah, it's exciting stuff.
Let's dive in.
Okay. Welcome back to our deep dive into quiet confidence. Yeah, it's been really interesting so far, kind of unpacking this idea that confidence doesn't have to be this like flashy in your face kind of thing.
Right, like it doesn't have to be loud.
Exactly.
And as we kind of move into thinking about real life applications, there's one area that the source material touches on that I thought was really interesting.
Okay.
And that's leadership.
Leadership. Okay, I got to be honest with you. My brain immediately goes to those charismatic, take charge types.
Right. And those qualities can definitely be effective.
Oh, for sure.
But what's really interesting is how the source material positions quiet confidence as its own style of leadership.
Okay, so it's not about necessarily being the loudest voice, but leading in a different way.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So think about leaders who inspire more through their actions than their words.
Okay.
They have this really strong sense of self,
Yeah.
a clear vision, and they kind of bring others along through their own quiet determination.
So they're leading by example, not necessarily by force of personality.
Exactly.
They might not be dominating every conversation,
Right.
but their presence is undeniable.
Yes, and the source material actually argues that this can be incredibly powerful, especially in environments that really value collaboration.
Because if you're trying to be the loudest voice all the time,
Right.
are you really hearing what other people have to say?
Are you really creating space for other people?
Right. Yeah, it seems like quiet confidence could actually help foster a more inclusive type of leadership.
Absolutely. It's less about me and more about us.
Yeah.
It's about creating space for others to share their ideas, to feel valued, and to really contribute.
So how can someone actually cultivate that kind of leadership, especially if they're not someone who naturally, gravitates toward being front and center?
Well, the source material really emphasizes these three key pillars:
Right.
authenticity,
Yeah.
integrity, and
Oh.
clear communication.
I mean, those sound like kind of big concepts.
They are, but they're really the bedrock of trust,
Okay.
which is essential for any leader.
That makes sense. So let's break those down a little bit.
Right.
Authenticity, I feel like I kind of get that.
Mm-hmm.
It's about being genuine, not putting on a fake persona.
Right. And in a leadership context, it means that your actions actually align with your words and values.
Okay.
Because people can tell when someone's not being real, especially over time.
Yeah. You can't fake it forever.
Exactly.
And integrity kind of goes hand in hand with that, right?
Absolutely. It's about walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
So it's not enough to just say the right things. You actually have to do them.
You have to do them. And when a leader's actions consistently match their words,
Yeah.
it builds that foundation of trust that makes people feel safe and confident following their lead.
That makes sense. But what about communication? Why is that so important for this quieter type of leader?
Well, if you're not the kind of person who commands attention by, being really loud or boisterous,
Right.
your message has to be crystal clear. It's about expressing your ideas really concisely, being a good listener,
Right.
and making sure everyone's on the same page.
So it's less about rambling on and more about choosing your words carefully.
Yeah, it's a more deliberate form of communication.
I like that.
One thing that the source material didn't explicitly mention, but I think it ties in really well with this concept of quiet confidence and leadership,
Yeah.
is the power of vulnerability.
Vulnerability? Okay. That seems almost counterintuitive.
Right.
Because we're talking about confidence.
Right.
And vulnerability is often seen as a weakness.
Right. But what if it's actually a strength?
Okay, interesting.
Especially for leaders.
Yeah.
When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, when we admit that we don't have all the answers,
Yeah.
it can actually create a much more authentic connection with people.
So it's not about pretending to be perfect, but about being real.
Exactly.
Even with your imperfections.
Exactly. And think about the impact that has on others. When a leader is willing to be vulnerable, it gives permission for others to do the same.
So it creates that safe space for more genuine connection.
Yes. And trust.
It humanizes the leader.
Right, absolutely. And makes them more relatable.
Yeah, because you're not this figure up on a pedestal.
Right.
You're a human being who's going through the same struggles as everyone else.
Exactly.
And it takes the pressure off of having to have all the answers.
Yes.
And instead it fosters this culture of learning and growing together.
Exactly. And that's where quiet confidence comes in.
Okay.
It's that inner strength that allows us to embrace our vulnerability, to own our imperfections, and to keep moving forward with like grace and resilience.
It's a reminder that true strength doesn't come from hiding our flaws,
Right.
but from acknowledging them and using them as like fuel for growth.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, I want you to consider this.
Okay.
How can you embrace your own vulnerability?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I like that.
And use it as a source of strength in your interactions with others.
That's definitely something to think about, and I'll be reflecting on that as we move into the final part of our deep dive into quiet confidence.
I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, we're going to be exploring how to apply this mindset, not just to leadership, but to all areas of our lives.
Yes.
Like navigating challenges and achieving our goals.
I think it's going to be really helpful.
Welcome back to our final part of this deep dive into quiet confidence.
It's been a really interesting journey so far, like from defining it to, talking about leadership and even like embracing vulnerability.
Yeah, it feels like we've been given all these new tools to navigate life with.
Totally, with more intention, more inner strength.
Exactly. And in this last part, I want to bring it all together by looking at how quiet confidence can actually help us overcome challenges and achieve our goals.
Right, because let's be real, life's going to throw curveballs.
Oh, yeah.
And having that inner resilience is like everything.
It makes all the difference.
It really does. And quiet confidence isn't about pretending that challenges don't exist.
Right.
Or that we're never going to doubt ourselves. It's about having that deep down belief that we can handle whatever comes our way.
So it's like having that voice in the back of your head saying, I got this.
Exactly.
Even when things feel really tough.
It's that unshakable belief that we can figure things out, that we can solve problems, and that we can come out stronger on the other side.
So when we're in the middle of a challenge,
Yeah.
how does that actually work? Like, what's the mechanism there?
Well, for one thing, quiet confidence really helps us regulate our emotions.
Okay.
So like when we're stressed or feeling overwhelmed, that inner confidence kind of acts like an anchor.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we have the resources to cope.
So it's like finding that inner calm.
Yes.
When everything around you feels like chaos.
Exactly.
So you can think clearly.
Yes.
And not just react impulsively.
Exactly. And it also keeps us focused on our goals. You know, when we hit those setbacks, it's really easy to get discouraged and lose sight of the big picture.
You forget why you're even doing it in the first place.
Exactly. But quiet confidence kind of pulls us back.
Yeah.
It reminds us why we started and helps us stay the course.
So it's like having that internal compass guiding you, even when the path is really difficult.
Yes. And it reminds me of something we talked about earlier, that idea of reframing rejection as data.
Oh, yeah. I like that one.
Not letting those setbacks define us.
Exactly. And that ties into resilience, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which quiet confidence fuels.
It does.
So it's not about being fearless.
Right.
But it's about having the courage to keep going.
Yes.
Even when it's hard.
Exactly.
But, I think for some people, and sometimes even for me, quiet confidence can feel really elusive. Like it's something other people just have naturally, and I'm over here still trying to figure it out.
That's totally understandable.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to remember that building quiet confidence is a journey.
Okay.
It takes practice, it takes self-reflection, and a willingness to step outside your comfort zone.
So it's not like you wake up one morning and you just have it.
No, it would be nice.
It would be nice, right?
But it's more about taking those small steps
consistently
to strengthen that inner foundation.
Like building that quiet confidence muscle.
Yes, exactly.
What are some tangible things that people can do to work on that?
Well, the source material suggests focusing on your strengths.
Okay.
Celebrating your accomplishments.
Okay.
And surrounding yourself with supportive people.
I mean, those all sound pretty straightforward.
They do.
But I can see how they could easily be overlooked.
Right, because we often focus on what we're not good at.
Yeah.
Instead of recognizing and leveraging our strengths.
It's so easy to get caught up in the negative.
Yeah, it is. And it's also so important to celebrate our accomplishments, both big and small.
Because it shows us what we're capable of.
It does. It reinforces that belief in our abilities.
So it's like giving yourself credit where credit is due.
Exactly. Not waiting for someone else to tell you you're doing a good job.
But recognizing your own progress.
Yes, and then there's the power of our support systems.
Yeah, the people around us.
Yeah, surrounding yourself with people who believe in you, who encourage you, who offer a listening ear, you know.
Because we can't always be our own cheerleaders.
We can't.
Sometimes we need someone else to remind us that we got this.
Absolutely.
And, something else that the source material talked about was self-care.
Oh, yeah.
Which might seem kind of unrelated.
Right.
But taking care of yourself physically and mentally is so important for building that resilience and that inner strength.
It's hard to tap into any kind of confidence if you're running on empty.
Exactly. So it's about nourishing yourself. So you have the energy and the mental clarity to face whatever comes your way.
Exactly. So quiet confidence isn't just a mental game.
Right.
It's a holistic endeavor.
Yeah, I like that.
It's about taking care of ourselves on all levels.
And we can show up as our best, most confident selves.
Absolutely. And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want you to consider this. What's one small, tangible step you can take today to cultivate more quiet confidence in your life?
It's a great question to think about. And remember, it doesn't have to be this big, huge thing.
Right.
It could be something as simple as acknowledging one of your strengths.
Yeah.
Celebrating a small win. Or even just taking a few minutes for yourself to recharge.
The key is to start somewhere, to take that first step, and to keep going on this journey
of self-discovery and empowerment.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into quiet confidence.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you found it insightful, inspiring, and most importantly, empowering.
Yes, and remember, you have the strength inside you to achieve incredible things.
Believe in yourself, trust your instincts, and never underestimate the quiet power you possess.
You got this.
And until next time, keep exploring, keep growing, and keep shining your unique light brightly.